She's a professor of philosophy at Binghamton University in New York, founder of Global Health Impact Project, and also the author of the book Globalization and Global Justice: Shrinking Distance, Expanding Obligations. Nicole Hassoun brings topics such as happiness, well-being, social change, global health, and other solutions for the world. Welcome, Nicole.
Thank you very much. It's great to see you.
So where are you right now?
I'm in New York, in Ithaca. It's very, very cold and snowy here.
Great pleasure to have you here, Nicole. We're starting this conversation. I'm going to ask you, we are living right now a historical phase in the world we've never seen before. How did the subjects you dedicated your researchers, your studies, became essential to your personal and academic life?
I started doing philosophy, I guess, as an undergraduate, and I was in Colorado, and I thought, oh, this is really great. There's not a lot of women doing this, but I'm going to do it anyway. So I got into some programs for graduate school. Went to the University of Arizona, which was really great, very warm climate. And then I decided I wanted to work on world poverty and human rights and global justice, because I spent some time traveling and mostly in Central America, but also Asia and other places. And I was like, wow, this is so much more important than studying some things that philosophers study, I think. So that's why I went into what I do. And then from my first book on global justice, I got interested in global health. And does that make sense?
Yeah,
Not too technical. Yeah.
As an environmentalist and sailor, I used to say that this is so huge and so important. When I look at you and when I look at your work, I see the human side and how important it is to communicate better with people, right? All the urge the planet has been facing. And you are the founder of Global Health Impact, which is a collaboration, right, of researchers from universities and civil society organizations from around the world, so people from everywhere, dedicated to measure pharmaceutical products' impact in global health to advance access to essential medicines. How did the process of this project, with intended to extend access to medicine to global poor, started?
Yeah. So obviously, if you care about world poverty, you care about global health, because poverty often undermines people's ability to live well enough and secure things like access to essential medicines. And so started working on international trade, and international trade law often can constrain access to medicines, make it worse. And so I had thought of, well, we need fair trade, right? Not just free trade, fair trade. And how can we make fair trade, for health, right? So I had this idea, saving lives and alleviating disability, and get them to focus more on that and not just creating the most money, right? Like allergy medicines for chronic diseases of rich patients, but get them to focus on the world's biggest health problems. That could be really, really significant. So what if we had something like a fair trade label for health, right? That you could find in the US, on rows of stuff in your grocery store, all the over-the-counter medicines, vitamins, supplements, even things like sunscreen that pharmaceutical companies make. That could create a huge incentive for them to do more to promote global health. And so I said, okay, I'll create a rating system. I'll create a way of evaluating pharmaceutical companies' contributions, so that the highest rated companies would be the ones that are saving the most lives, not just the biggest, the ones that have the most money. And originally I was like, well, I went to Stanford for a postdoc. Would you like to make this thing to people? And they were like, yeah, that's really great. I'm doing other stuff. That's really great. I was like, okay, I'll do it. So I got some, students together and eventually faculty members to contribute to doing the kind of evaluation of these companies' efforts. And it worked to some degree, I would say. So like Sanofi was using the label right next to Forbes on their website, right? Like the companies are paying attention to the health impacts of their interventions. But then I also realized that like evaluating where we're saving the most lives and alleviating the most disability is really important. Like, it's important for asking things like, well, why are we succeeding in some places and not others? And if you can't answer the why question, you can't really improve, right? Like, why is it we can do well here and not there? Well, we know if we do this, then we have a greater health impact. Then, well, maybe we could do that there too, right? The index that we provide actually looks at the lives saved and disability alleviated with medicines for diseases like malaria, tuberculosis, and AIDS, big global health problems in each country in the world, right? And so the thought is then you can ask these questions before people are paying attention to like the need for the medicines, which is again really important. Where do we need more? Where could we have a greater health impact? But then how do we do that is a question I'd wanted to, open the door to ask.
Yeah, I remember I read an article, I think you wrote for Psyche Ideas, where you bring this question about needs and necessities, right? Do you think people are rethinking life more in terms of consumerism, or consumerism is still something that is growing? So what kind of system we should look for, and what are the expectations considering real life right now?
And I guess the thought behind this project, which is this next book project, and I sort of talk about in the article, is that when we're thinking about what people need to live well enough, what we should do is put ourselves in that person's shoes and think, what would I need to live their life if I was that person, right? Like if I had their history and their psychology and everything, what would I need for there to be like no serious risk that my life, and that gives us, purchase on what a basic minimum would require. So like if we're setting social safety nets, if we're concerned about human rights, if we want to know if people can consume enough to survive and what that would require, I think that might be a useful way of thinking about it. But again, it's like, I'm not sure how much just that basic, or establishing like this is a basic minimum can do to like constrain consumption, right? Independently, we need to say, okay, and we have this huge environmental problem. Like we have climate change and we need to refocus on, people in poor countries to be able to get to that basic minimum, and people in rich countries to constrain the pollution and the ways that they're setting up their basic energy infrastructure, and reorganize things so that everyone can live well enough, which might also require protecting, definitely, I think also requires protecting the planet on which we live. So I'm not sure the Minimally Good Life Project will have that part of it in there, but I've definitely thought about that. And I think it's really important to pay attention to, our energy policies, our trade policies, and other things. Can I ask you a question?
Of course.
Yeah. So I mean, you had this amazing experience of being out there on the sea for 7 years, and sometimes there's conflict like involved in that. I'm supposing like maybe between whalers and creepies, for instance. And you're thinking, well, these guys, they're out there doing their job, right? Like to feed their families, and they need to get these whales or whatever. And I want to stop them from getting the whales because the whales matter. And so how did you think about that environmental conflict? Like, how did you think about what it was legitimate for you to do, like what it wasn't okay for you to do? I don't know. I'm just curious.
Well, one thing is when you see a fisherman or a community feeding their families, so they needed to go out at sea to support their life and sustain their life, right? Or their community's life. The other thing is when you see a system, a corrupt system operating to maintain the industry. So I think there is a clear difference between one community that needs it to survive, and the massive industry. Well, Nicole, you wrote 2 books, very important books. Your researches are global justice, global health, applied ethics. This is really, really challenging. What really moves you?
Yeah, wow, it's such a deep question. I really care about people. I do care about the environment, and I want to leave a better world for my children, for everybody else's children. I think, yeah, I think we live in a very sad world, and I wish that we can make it better together.
So it's the hope to see a better planet.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So the last question here, classic question in my channel. What is your relationship with Earth, with the planet?
That is a really good question. I feel so bad about the way that I live because I used to have a very sustainable lifestyle, I thought, and I think it's a luxury in this country to be able to do that. When I teach environmental ethics to students, then we'll do this global footprint kind of task where you see how big your footprint is, and even the best students, they need 2.5 planets to survive or something. And they might not have a car, they might be vegetarian, and everything they can possibly do. And the problem is, right, it's not their fault, but collectively we've failed. And I think we need to really think about our collective responses to the environmental crisis.
Exactly. Beautiful. Yeah. It's only one planet. Nicole, thank you so much for your participation, your contribution, for this beautiful planet we live in. Very happy, honored to hear you and get to know more about your work. Thank you very much.
Yeah.